I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the neon orange envelope wedged into my front door. After 30 years with the FBI, you develop an instinct for trouble, and that garish piece of paper screamed it louder than any alarm system ever could. I pulled it free and unfolded what turned out to be a notice from the Willowbrook Homeowners Association, citing me for 7 different violations I'd supposedly committed within my first 2 weeks of living in this Phoenix, Arizona suburb. My wife Jennifer and I had just moved into our dream home on Saguaro Ridge Drive. After decades of bouncing between field offices in Chicago, Seattle, and finally Quantico, I'd earned my retirement, and we'd chosen this quiet community specifically because it seemed peaceful. The house was a beautiful southwestern-style ranch with terracotta tiles and a backyard that overlooked the desert landscape. Our daughter Emma, who was finishing her senior year at Arizona State University, loved having us closer. Everything had been perfect until this moment. The notice listed infractions ranging from my trash cans being visible from the street to my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. Apparently, my desert landscaping stones were a 1/4 inch too large according to the HOA guidelines, and the small American flag I'd mounted by my garage was not in the approved location. The fines totaled $850, payable within 14 days, or they'd place a lien on my property. I read through the document twice, my jaw tightening with each absurd complaint. The signature at the bottom belonged to Patricia Whitmore, HOA president. A phone number was listed beneath her printed name, along with a threat that failure to comply would result in further legal action. Jennifer came to the door, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "What's that, honey?" I handed her the notice without a word. Her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief as she scanned the page. "This is insane," she said. "Our trash cans were out for exactly 4 hours on collection day. I brought them in the moment I got home from the grocery store. And that flag was hung according to the U.S. Flag code," I added. "I've been following those regulations since my academy days." Jennifer's face flushed with anger. $850 for stones and a mailbox. "Richard, this is extortion." I took the notice back and studied it more carefully. Something about the tone struck me as off. The language was aggressive, almost threatening, in a way that went beyond standard HOA enforcement. In my years investigating white-collar crime, I'd seen plenty of petty tyranny disguised as legitimate authority. This felt similar. "I'll handle it," I said. "Let me make a call to this Patricia Whitmore tomorrow and see if we can resolve this reasonably." But reasonable wasn't in Patricia Whitmore's vocabulary, as I discovered the next morning when I dialed the number on the notice. The phone rang 4 times before a sharp voice answered. "Whitmore Residence." "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. This is Richard Nelson. I live at 4527 Saguaro Ridge Drive, and I received a notice yesterday about several alleged violations." "Alleged?" Her voice turned icy. "There's nothing alleged about it, Mr. Nelson. I personally documented each infraction during my neighborhood inspection last Thursday." I kept my tone level and professional. "I'd like to discuss these items with you. Several of them seem to be either incorrect or based on interpretations of the guidelines that I don't believe are accurate." "The guidelines are perfectly clear," she snapped. "Every homeowner receives a copy when they purchase property in Willowbrook. You signed an acknowledgement that you read and understood the covenants, conditions, and restrictions." "I did read them, Mrs. Whitmore, which is why I'm confused. For instance, the American flag provision states that flags may be displayed following federal guidelines. The flag code allows for placement on or near the principal building. The HOA board has determined that near means within 2 feet of the front entrance. Your flag is mounted by the garage, which is 14 feet from your front door. I pinched the bridge of my nose. That's not what the flag code means, and I'm certain the HOA can't override federal law on this matter. Are you threatening legal action, Mr. Nelson? Her voice rose. Because I should warn you that this HOA has substantial resources and an excellent attorney. We've litigated against homeowners before, and we always win. I'm not threatening anything, I said calmly. I'm simply trying to understand the basis for these violations so we can resolve them. The basis is that you broke the rules. Pay the fine, correct the violations, or face the consequences. I don't have time to debate with every new homeowner who thinks the rules don't apply to them. She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone. Jennifer walked in with 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of me. How did it go? About as well as a hostage negotiation with someone who's already made up their mind to shoot. Jennifer sat down across from me. What do we do? I'm going to attend the next HOA board meeting, I said. According to the bylaws in our welcome packet, meetings are held the first Tuesday of every month. That's in 5 days. I'll present our case to the full board, not just Patricia Whitmore. The next few days passed quietly, but I noticed something unsettling. Every time I left the house, I saw Patricia Whitmore's silver Mercedes slowly cruising past. She'd stop, take photos with her phone, and then drive away. On Saturday morning, I was replacing a light bulb in our porch fixture when she pulled up and rolled down her window. That fixture needs to be brass finished, not brushed nickel, she called out. I'll be adding that to your violation list. The fixture came with the house, I replied. It was here when we moved in. Then the previous owners were also in violation, and now it's your responsibility to fix it. She took several photos and drove off. Jennifer witnessed this from the living room window. When I came back inside, she looked worried. This woman is harassing us, Richard. She's looking for problems that don't exist. I know, I said, but let's give the board meeting a chance. Maybe the other members are more reasonable. Tuesday evening arrived, and I drove to the Willowbrook Community Center for the HOA meeting. The building was a modest single-story structure near the neighborhood entrance. Inside, a conference room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat, and rows of folding chairs facing them. About 20 homeowners were scattered throughout the audience. Patricia Whitmore sat in the center position at the table. She was exactly what I'd expected. A woman in her late 50s with severely styled blonde hair, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit and an expression that suggested she'd been sucking lemons. To her right sat a nervous-looking man with thick glasses who kept shuffling papers. The other 3 board members seemed half asleep. Patricia gavelled the meeting to order and launched into old business, mostly complaints about other homeowners. She spoke about each case with evident relish, describing violations in excruciating detail and announcing fines with barely concealed satisfaction. When we reached new business, I raised my hand. Yes, the gentleman in the back, Patricia said, her eyes narrowing when she recognized me. I stood up. Richard Nelson, 4527 Saguaro Ridge Drive. I'd like to address the violations notice I received last week. Mr. Nelson, this meeting isn't for disputing individual violation notices. You can submit a written appeal to the board. With respect, Mrs. Whitmore, the bylaws state that any homeowner may address the board during the new business portion of the meeting regarding matters affecting their property. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Very well. You have 3 minutes. I walked to the front and turned to face both the board and the other homeowners. I received a notice citing 7 violations and demanding payment of $850. I've reviewed each alleged violation carefully, and I believe most of them are either factually incorrect or based on overly restrictive interpretations of the community guidelines. Patricia interrupted. The board's interpretation of the guidelines is final. I'm not finished, Mrs. Whitmore. My voice carried the authority I'd used in countless interrogations. She actually leaned back slightly. For example, I'm being fined for an American flag display that fully complies with federal law. The HOA cannot enforce restrictions that violate the freedom to display the American Flag Act of 2005. I'm also being fined for landscaping stones that are supposedly too large. Yet I measured them myself, and they fall within the acceptable range specified in the guidelines. The nervous man with glasses whispered something to Patricia. She waved him off. Mr. Nelson, your measurements are clearly inaccurate. I personally inspected your property, and I stand by every violation listed. Then I'd like to request a formal reinspection with board members present, along with proper measuring tools. I'd also like to see the documentation for your inspection, including photos with measurements. Patricia's face reddened. Are you calling me a liar? I'm asking for transparency in the enforcement process. That seems reasonable. Another board member, an older gentleman with white hair, cleared his throat. Patricia, maybe we should consider the request. It's not unprecedented to verify measurements if there's a dispute. Frank, we don't have time to hold every homeowner's hand when they can't follow simple rules, Patricia snapped. I kept my expression neutral. I'm willing to pay legitimate fines for actual violations. But I'm not paying $850 for infractions that either don't exist or are based on interpretations that exceed the HOA's legal authority. Patricia stood up abruptly. Mr. Nelson, your time is up. The board will take your comments under advisement. If you fail to pay the assessed fines by the deadline, we'll proceed with placing a lien on your property and pursuing further legal action. I understand, I said calmly. I look forward to your response. I returned to my seat, and the meeting continued. Several other homeowners shot me sympathetic looks. After the meeting adjourned, 3 of them approached me in the parking lot. Mr. Nelson, I'm Doug Harrison. I live over on Desert Willow Court. He was a man in his 40s with a firm handshake. I just want you to know that a lot of us are dealing with the same thing. Patricia has been fining people left and right for the past year, and it's gotten out of control. A woman in her 60s nodded. I'm Barbara Chen. She fined me $600 because my rose bushes were supposedly encroaching on the sidewalk by 3 inches. I had a landscaping company verify the measurements, and they were completely within the guidelines. She wouldn't even look at their report. The third person, a younger man who introduced himself as Marcus Webb, added, She's using the HOA as her personal fiefdom. Anyone who challenges her gets put on her target list, and then she inspects their property every single day looking for new violations. Has anyone tried to remove her from the board? I asked. Doug shook his head. She controls the votes. The other board members are either her friends or too intimidated to stand up to her. We'd need a majority of homeowners to call a special election, and most people are too afraid of retaliation. Or they've already moved, Barbara added quietly. 3 families on my street have sold their homes in the past 8 months because of the harassment. I exchanged contact information with all 3 of them and drove home with a lot to think about. This wasn't just a case of an overzealous HOA president. Patricia Whitmore was systematically abusing her position, and based on what these homeowners had told me, she'd been doing it for some time. When I got home, Jennifer was waiting up. How did it go? About as well as expected, I said, filling her in on the details. But I met some other homeowners who are dealing with the same issues. This is bigger than just our violations. So what's our next step? I thought about it carefully. I'm going to do what I always did when I encountered abuse of authority. I'm going to investigate. Over the next 3 days, I conducted what I called a neighborhood canvass. I went door to door in Willowbrook, introducing myself as a new resident and asking homeowners about their experiences with the HOA. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Patricia Whitmore had become HOA president 4 years ago. According to multiple sources, she'd initially seemed organized and efficient, but about 18 months into her tenure, something changed. She began interpreting the community guidelines more strictly, issuing fines for increasingly minor infractions. Her enforcement was also selective. Homeowners who challenged her or voted against her proposals found themselves under constant scrutiny, while her friends seemed immune to enforcement. I documented 12 families who'd been fined more than $500 in the past year. 5 families had moved away specifically because of HOA harassment. 2 homeowners had paid thousands of dollars in fines they believed were unjustified because they couldn't afford to hire attorneys to fight back. One elderly man, George Patterson, broke down when I spoke with him. She fined me $1,200 because my grass was supposedly dead in 3 spots. Mr. Nelson, I'm on a fixed income. I had to take money from my grandson's college fund to pay it because she threatened to foreclose on my house. I assured George that I was going to do something about the situation, though I wasn't yet sure what that would be. The breakthrough came on Friday afternoon. I'd requested copies of all HOA financial records, which the bylaws stated must be made available to any homeowner upon written request. Patricia had ignored my first request, so I'd sent a second one via certified mail, citing the specific bylaw that required disclosure. When the records finally arrived, delivered by the nervous board member I'd seen at the meeting, I spread them across my dining room table and began my analysis. Jennifer brought me lunch while I worked, but I barely touched it. "Finding anything interesting?" she asked. "Very interesting," I murmured, highlighting another entry. What I discovered was a pattern of financial irregularities that made my FBI instincts kick into high gear. The HOA collected monthly dues of $125 from each of the 230 homes in Willowbrook. That was over $340,000 annually, plus the fines that Patricia had been aggressively collecting. According to the financial records, the HOA's major expenses included landscaping for common areas, pool maintenance, security lighting, and administration costs. But when I compared the reported expenses to what I'd observed in the neighborhood, the numbers didn't add up. The landscaping line item showed monthly payments of $4,000 to a company called Summit Landscaping Services. I'd noticed that the common areas were minimally maintained, certainly not to the standard that would justify that kind of expense. I did a quick search online and found that Summit Landscaping Services had been registered as an LLC in Arizona just 2 years ago. The registered agent was Michael Whitmore. I cross-referenced the name with public records and discovered that Michael Whitmore was Patricia's son. He was 28 years old with no apparent background in landscaping. His previous employment had been as a sales associate at an electronics store. I dug deeper. Several other vendors that appeared regularly in the HOA expenses had similar red flags. Desert Property Management, which received a monthly payment of $3,000 for administrative services, was owned by Patricia's sister. Willowbrook Security Consulting, which billed the HOA $1,500 quarterly for security assessments, Didn't appear to have any legitimate business presence beyond a P.O. box. The more I looked, the clearer the picture became. Patricia Whitmore was using the HOA as a personal piggy bank, funneling money to family members and possibly fictitious companies. The aggressive fine collection wasn't just about control, it was about generating additional revenue for her scheme. I estimated that over the past 2 years, Patricia had diverted at least $200,000 from the HOA funds. "Jennifer, come look at this," I called out. She came into the dining room and I walked her through what I'd found. Her eyes widened as she understood the scope of what Patricia had been doing. "This is embezzlement," Jennifer said. "Richard, this is serious." "It's very serious," I agreed. "And it explains why she's been so aggressive about maintaining control of the board and intimidating anyone who asks questions." "What are you going to do?" I gathered the financial records into a neat stack. "I'm going to take this to the other homeowners who have been fighting back. Then we're going to call for a special meeting and remove Patricia from the board. After that, we're filing a police report." "She's not going to go quietly." "No," I said, "she's not." That evening, I called Doug Harrison, Barbara Chen, and Marcus Webb and asked them to meet me at a local coffee shop. When they arrived, I laid out everything I'd discovered. Doug's face went pale as he reviewed the documents. I knew she was corrupt, but I didn't imagine it was this organized. "She's been stealing from all of us for 2 years, Barbara said, her voice shaking with anger. "Every fine she collected, every inflated vendor payment, it was all going into her pocket." Marcus was already pulling up the HOA bylaws on his phone. "According to Article 7, Section 3, we can call for a special meeting with a petition signed by 25% of homeowners. That's 58 signatures. We can get that by tomorrow," Doug said. "Between the 4 of us and the people we know who have been affected by Patricia's enforcement, we'll have more than enough." We divided up the neighborhood and spent the next day collecting signatures. The response was overwhelming. Homeowners who'd been too afraid to speak up were eager to sign once they understood what Patricia had been doing. By Saturday evening, we had 93 signatures. I drafted the special meeting notice, citing the purpose as reviewing financial irregularities and conducting a vote of no confidence in the current board president. According to the bylaws, the meeting had to be scheduled within 14 days of receiving a valid petition. On Sunday morning, I personally delivered the petition to Patricia Whitmore's house. It was a large Mediterranean-style home at the end of a cul-de-sac, easily twice the size of most houses in the neighborhood. I wondered how much of it had been financed by stolen HOA funds. Patricia opened the door wearing a silk bathrobe, her face without makeup. She looked older and less formidable than she did at board meetings. "Mr. Nelson," she said coldly. "What do you want?" I handed her the petition. "This is a formal request for a special meeting of the Willowbrook HOA, signed by 93 homeowners. As president, you're required to schedule the meeting within 14 days. She scanned the document, her expression hardening with each line. "This is ridiculous. You're wasting everyone's time with baseless accusations." "The accusations are detailed in the attached documentation," I said. "I've reviewed the HOA financial records that you provided per my request, and I've identified multiple irregularities that require explanation." "You don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "I've managed this HOA's finances perfectly. Every expense is legitimate and approved by the board." "Then the meeting will clear everything up," I said calmly. "I look forward to your explanations." "The bylaws require you to schedule the meeting within 14 days and notify all homeowners at least 5 days in advance. I trust you'll comply." I turned to walk away, but Patricia's voice stopped me. "You've made a big mistake, Mr. Nelson. I don't know who you think you are, coming into this neighborhood and stirring up trouble, but I will bury you in legal fees. I'll fine you every single day until you can't afford to live here. I'll make your life so miserable that you'll beg to sell your house." I turned back slowly. "Is that a threat, Mrs. Whitmore?" "It's a promise." I looked at her carefully, reading the desperation beneath the bravado. She knew she was cornered, and cornered people make mistakes. "Schedule the meeting, Mrs. Whitmore. It's your legal obligation." I walked back to my car, very aware that she was watching me from her doorway. As I drove away, I saw her on her phone, gesturing angrily. The retaliation started within hours. By Sunday afternoon, I had 3 new violation notices taped to my door. My doorbell camera had caught Patricia herself placing them there, along with another woman I didn't recognize. The violations were absurd even by Patricia's standards. My house number was allegedly crooked. The grout between my driveway pavers was the wrong color. A decorative pot on my porch was 2 inches wider than the maximum allowed size for porch decorations. The combined fines totaled $900. Jennifer was furious. "She's completely out of control." "That's fine," I said. "It actually helps our case. I'm documenting everything." On Monday morning, I received a call from a lawyer named Gerald Kensington, who introduced himself as the HOA's attorney. "Mr. Nelson, I'm calling regarding your outstanding fines and your recent petition for a special meeting." "I'm listening." "My client, Mrs. Whitmore, is willing to waive all current fines against your property if you withdraw the petition and issue a written apology to the board for making false accusations." "That's interesting," I said, "but I'm not interested in that offer." "Mr. Nelson, I should inform you that if you proceed with this meeting and make public accusations against Mrs. Whitmore without evidence, you could be liable for defamation. The HOA is prepared to file suit." "Mr. Kensington, I have extensive documentation supporting every claim in that petition, but I appreciate the heads up about potential litigation. You might want to advise your client about the legal implications of embezzlement and the penalties for misappropriation of funds from a homeowners association." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" "I think you should review the materials attached to the petition very carefully. If you're billing the HOA for legal services, you might want to ensure you're not implicated in any criminal activity." Another pause. "I'll review the documentation and get back to you." He never called back. Patricia did schedule the special meeting, but she set it for the maximum 14 days out and scheduled it for 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, clearly hoping that working homeowners wouldn't be able to attend. I sent an email to everyone I'd been working with, suggesting that people take time off work if possible. Doug created a neighborhood Facebook group to coordinate attendance and share information about what we'd discovered. The response was extraordinary. Homeowners who'd been silent for years started sharing their own stories of Patricia's abuses. Someone posted a spreadsheet tracking all the fines issued over the past 2 years, showing that certain homeowners were targeted far more frequently than others. Another person found that the landscaping company Patricia's son owned had no business license for the first year. It was supposedly providing services to the HOA. As the meeting date approached, Patricia's harassment intensified. She drove through the neighborhood daily, taking photos of every property. Several of the homeowners who'd signed the petition received violation notices for minor infractions. Doug was fined for a garden hose that was visible from the street. Barbara was cited because her mailbox flag was allegedly faded, but the intimidation had the opposite effect. Instead of backing down, More homeowners came forward to support the petition. By the day before the meeting, over 150 homeowners had joined the Facebook group. On Wednesday evening, I received an unexpected visit. I was in my garage organizing some boxes when a black BMW pulled into my driveway. A man in an expensive suit got out and approached. "Richard Nelson." "That's me." He pulled out a business card. "I'm Thomas Carlyle, private investigator. I've been hired to conduct a background check on you." I took the card and examined it. "Let me guess. Patricia Whitmore hired you. I'm not at liberty to discuss my clients, but I thought it was professional courtesy to let you know that I'll be looking into your history, your finances, your employment record, everything. If there are any skeletons in your closet, I'll find them." I almost laughed. "Mr. Carlyle, I spent 30 years with the FBI. I've been background checked more times than I can count, including multiple polygraphs. You're welcome to investigate me all you want. You won't find anything because there's nothing to find." His confident expression faltered slightly. "You were FBI, retired FBI. 25 years as a field agent, 5 years at headquarters. I specialized in white-collar crime, financial fraud, and public corruption, which is why I recognized embezzlement when I saw it in the HOA financial records." Thomas Carlyle stood very still, processing this information. "I see. While you're conducting your investigation, you might want to investigate your client instead. The evidence I've compiled would be more than enough for a federal prosecutor to seek an indictment. I know because I used to help prepare those cases." He cleared his throat. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Nelson." He got back in his BMW and left. I doubt Patricia got the report she was hoping for. Thursday afternoon arrived bright and clear. The special meeting was scheduled at the community center, but it was obvious within the first 10 minutes that the venue wasn't large enough. Homeowners packed the conference room, filled the hallway, and spilled out into the parking lot. I estimated that over 200 people had shown up. Patricia sat at the board table looking like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. The other board members appeared nervous. Frank, the older gentleman who'd spoken up at the previous meeting, looked distinctly uncomfortable. Patricia gavelled the meeting to order. "This special meeting of the Willowbrook HOA has been called to address allegations made by Richard Nelson regarding HOA financial management. Before we begin, I want to state for the record that these allegations are baseless and defamatory." I stood up from my seat in the front row. "Mrs. Whitmore, I have the floor first according to the bylaws governing special meetings." She glared at me but didn't argue. I walked to the front of the room and connected my laptop to the projector screen. "Thank you all for coming. I'm going to present evidence that Patricia Whitmore has been systematically embezzling money from the Willowbrook HOA for approximately 2 years. The room erupted in murmurs. Patricia stood up. "This is outrageous. I demand you'll have an opportunity to respond, Mrs. Whitmore. Please sit down." Something in my tone made her comply. I displayed the first slide, showing the HOA's monthly payments to Summit Landscaping Services. The HOA pays $4,000 per month to this company. That's $48,000 annually for landscaping of common areas. However, Summit Landscaping Services is owned by Michael Whitmore, Patricia's son. I've documented the actual state of our common areas over the past month. I showed photographs of the neighborhood entrance, pool area, and walking paths. The landscaping was minimal, certainly not professionally maintained. I contacted 3 legitimate landscaping companies in Phoenix and requested quotes for the level of service that $48,000 should provide. All 3 quotes were between $1,500 and $2,000 per month for premium service. I also obtained quotes for the level of service we're actually receiving. Those quotes ranged from $500 to $700 per month. I displayed the quotes on screen. This means the HOA is being overcharged by approximately $3,000 per month for landscaping services, money that's going directly to Patricia Whitmore's son. Patricia's face had gone white. Several homeowners were taking notes. I moved to the next slide. Desert Property Management receives $3,000 monthly for administrative services. This company is owned by Patricia's sister, Linda Whitmore Hayes. According to the service agreement, these administrative services include processing HOA correspondence, maintaining files, and coordinating with vendors. I paused. I filed a Freedom of Information request with the Arizona Corporation Commission to review Desert Property Management's business filings. The company lists no employees. It has no office address beyond a P.O. box. In fact, I can find no evidence that this company provides any services whatsoever. More murmurs from the crowd, louder this time. Then there's Willowbrook Security Consulting, which bills the HOA $1,500 per quarter. I've attempted to contact this company multiple times and received no response. The business address listed in our HOA records doesn't exist. I believe this is a shell company created solely to funnel additional money from the HOA. I displayed a summary slide. In total, I estimate that Patricia Whitmore has diverted at least $200,000 from HOA funds over the past 2 years. This is in addition to the aggressive fine collection she's implemented, which has generated an additional $30,000 to $40,000 annually. Frank, the older board member, raised his hand. Patricia, is any of this true? Patricia stood up, her hands shaking. How dare you? How dare all of you? I've dedicated 4 years of my life to managing this community. I've maintained property values, enforced standards, and worked tirelessly to make Willowbrook a desirable place to live. And this is the thanks I get. Accusations from someone who's lived here for 3 weeks. Answer the question, Frank said firmly. Is Summit Landscaping owned by your son? My son's business affairs are none of your concern. They are when the HOA is paying his company, Frank replied. Patricia, you've never disclosed this conflict of interest. That alone is a violation of your fiduciary duty as president. Patricia grabbed her purse. I don't have to listen to this. This meeting is a witch hunt and I'm not participating in it. Sit down, Mrs. Whitmore, I said quietly. We're not finished. She spun to face me. Who the hell do you think you are? You come into my neighborhood, my community that I've built, and you think you can destroy me. I know people, Mr. Nelson. I have connections. I'll make sure you regret ever moving to Willowbrook. Your neighborhood. I let that hang in the air. Mrs. Whitmore, you don't own this community. You're an elected official who's been entrusted with managing it on behalf of all the homeowners here. Instead, you've abused that trust to steal from them. I haven't stolen anything. Then explain the payments to your son's company. Explain Desert Property Management. Explain Willowbrook Security Consulting. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see her mind racing, trying to find a way out. I want immunity, she finally said. If I cooperate, I want immunity from prosecution. The room went completely silent. Frank looked stunned. Patricia, what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe some of the vendor relationships weren't properly disclosed, but that doesn't mean anything illegal happened. If the board wants a full accounting, fine, but I need protection from legal action first. I shook my head. I can't offer you immunity, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm not a prosecutor anymore. But I can tell you that cooperation typically results in more lenient treatment. Anymore, she stared at me. What do you mean anymore? I spent 30 years with the FBI, I said calmly. 25 years as a field agent investigating financial crimes, 5 years at headquarters. I retired last year as a supervisory special agent, so when I looked at the HOA financial records, I knew exactly what I was seeing. Patricia sat down heavily, her face ashen. The other board members were staring at her in horror. "You're FBI," she whispered. "Retired FBI, but I still have plenty of contacts in the Phoenix field office, which is where I'll be taking this evidence tomorrow morning if you don't resign tonight and agree to cooperate in recovering the stolen funds." The fight went out of her completely. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment she looked like what she was, a woman who'd been caught. Doug Harrison stood up from the audience. "I move that Patricia Whitmore be removed as HOA president effective immediately, and that the board terminate all vendor contracts pending a full audit." "Second," Barbara Chen called out. Frank looked down the table at the other board members, all of whom nodded. "All in favor?" "Aye," came a chorus of voices from the board and the audience. "The motion passes unanimously," Frank said. "Patricia, you're removed as president. Please surrender all HOA property, including files, records, and bank account access information, by tomorrow morning." Patricia didn't respond. She just sat there, staring at the table. I addressed the room. "I'm recommending that the board hire a forensic accountant to conduct a complete audit of HOA finances for the past 4 years. I'm also recommending that the board file a police report regarding the suspected embezzlement. The homeowners here deserve to know the full extent of what was taken and to recover as much as possible." Frank nodded. "Agreed. Richard, would you be willing to serve as acting president while we sort this out? I hadn't expected that." "I'm honored, but I think someone who's been in the community longer might be more appropriate." "You're the only person here who has the expertise to guide us through this mess," Doug said from the audience. "I think Richard should do it." A chorus of agreement rose from the crowd. "All right," I said. "I'll serve temporarily until we can hold proper elections." The meeting continued for another hour as we discussed next steps. Patricia sat silently at the table until the meeting was adjourned, then she left without a word. Over the next 2 weeks, the full scope of Patricia's scheme became clear. The forensic accountant we hired traced payments to multiple entities controlled by Patricia or her family members. In total, she'd stolen approximately $260,000 over 4 years. I met with the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit and provided them with all the documentation I'd compiled. The detective assigned to the case, a sharp woman named Detective Sarah Ortiz, was impressed with the quality of the evidence. "You made our job easy, Mr. Nelson," she said. "I heard you were FBI, it shows. I just want to see justice done and have the money returned to the homeowners who were victimized. We'll do our best on both counts." Patricia Whitmore was arrested 3 weeks after the special meeting and charged with embezzlement, fraud, and theft. Her son Michael was charged as an accomplice for his role in the landscaping scheme. Patricia's sister Linda cooperated with investigators and avoided prosecution by agreeing to return the money she'd received. The case moved through the system relatively quickly. Patricia's attorney negotiated a plea agreement in which she pleaded guilty to embezzlement and agreed to repay the full amount stolen plus damages. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with the possibility of reduced time for good behavior. Michael received probation and community service. The recovered funds were returned to the HOA, which used them to fund long overdue repairs and improvements to the community amenities. We repainted the pool area, upgraded the playground equipment, and enhanced the landscaping throughout the neighborhood. I served as HOA president for 6 months until we held new elections. In that time, we completely overhauled the HOA's operations. We implemented transparent financial reporting with monthly statements posted online for all homeowners to review. We revised the enforcement procedures to include an appeals process and required that any fines over $200 be approved by a majority of the board. We also established term limits for board positions to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power. The election resulted in a new board that included Doug Harrison as president, Barbara Chen as treasurer, and several other homeowners who were committed to fair and transparent governance. I was happy to step back and return to enjoying my retirement. Jennifer and I finally got to experience the peaceful life we'd moved to Phoenix for. Emma graduated from Arizona State and got a job with a marketing firm in Scottsdale, living close enough that we saw her every week. Our home became the gathering place for neighborhood barbecues and holiday parties, something that never would have happened under Patricia's regime. One Saturday morning, about 8 months after Patricia's arrest, I was washing my car in the driveway when a familiar silver Mercedes drove slowly past. My hand went instinctively to my phone, ready to document another harassment incident, before I remembered that Patricia was in prison. The car stopped and a young man got out. It was Michael Whitmore. I set down my sponge and walked to the end of my driveway. "Michael, Mr. Nelson," he said quietly, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to apologize." I studied him carefully. He looked thinner than in the photos I'd seen, and there was genuine remorse in his eyes. "I was stupid," he continued. "My mom convinced me that what we were doing was legal, that the HOA was paying fair market rates for the services. I didn't ask questions because I needed the money." "That's not an excuse, I know, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for my part in what happened." "Have you made things right?" I asked. "I've paid back everything I received plus interest. I'm working 2 jobs to cover it, and I'm finishing the community service the court ordered. I'm also taking business ethics classes at the community college." I nodded slowly. "That's good, Michael. That's how you move forward from mistakes. You acknowledge them, you make amends, and you learn from them." "My mom still blames you, you know," he said. "She tells anyone who'll listen that you destroyed her life." "I didn't destroy her life. She made choices, and those choices had consequences." "I know." He looked down at his feet. "I just thought you should know that at least one person from my family understands that you did the right thing. Thank you for not letting us get away with it." He got back in his car and drove away. Jennifer had been watching from the front window. She came out to join me. "That was unexpected," she said. "Sometimes people surprise you," I replied. "Not often, but sometimes." She slipped her arm through mine. "Do you ever regret it? All the drama and conflict. We could have just paid the fines and kept our heads down." I thought about it for a moment, looking around at the neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes in the street. Neighbors were chatting over fences. The common areas looked beautiful, properly maintained for the first time in years. "No," I said. "I don't regret it at all. Somebody had to stand up to her. It just happened to be me." "My retired FBI agent husband," Jennifer said with a smile, "still fighting the good fight." "Old habits," I said. We went back to washing the car, enjoying the warm Phoenix sunshine and the sound of the neighborhood coming alive around us. No violation notices appeared on our door. No Mercedes cruised past taking photos. No threatening phone calls or intimidating letters. Just peace. A few months later, I ran into Doug at the community pool. He was there with his kids, and we stood in the shade talking while they played in the water. "I've been meaning to thank you again," Doug said, "for everything you did. I don't think any of us would have had the courage to take on Patricia without your leadership. You would have figured it out eventually, I said. The evidence was all there in the financial records. Maybe, but you knew what to look for, and you weren't afraid of her. He paused. Can I ask you something? When did you know for sure that she was stealing? The moment I saw that first violation notice, I said. The tone was wrong. It wasn't about enforcing rules. It was about asserting dominance and generating revenue. In my experience, people who abuse authority in small ways usually have bigger secrets they're protecting. FBI training, life experience. But yeah, the FBI training didn't hurt. We watched the kids play for a while, enjoying the simple pleasure of a community pool that was actually being maintained properly. You know what the best part is, Doug said. Property values in Willowbrook have actually increased since we got rid of Patricia. Turns out that reasonable HOA governance is more attractive to buyers than draconian enforcement. I laughed. Who would have thought? As the sun set that evening, I sat on my back porch with Jennifer, watching the desert sky turn shades of orange and purple that you just don't see anywhere else. Emma was coming over for dinner and I had steaks ready for the grill. This is nice, Jennifer said. This is what retirement is supposed to be. It is, I agreed. No more bad guys to chase. Well, I said with a smile, maybe just the occasional corrupt HOA president. She laughed and squeezed my hand. The doorbell rang, announcing Emma's arrival. I got up to fire up the grill, thinking about how lucky I was. I'd spent 3 decades putting bad people in prison, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. I'd planned to spend my retirement playing golf and traveling. Instead, I'd stumbled into one more case, one more abuse of power that needed to be corrected. And honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Some people are wired to stand up to bullies. 30 years with the FBI had refined that instinct, but it had always been there. Patricia Whitmore had tried to intimidate my family, tried to use her position to make our lives miserable. She'd backed off when she learned I was retired FBI, but by then it was too late. I'd already seen through her schemes, already started building the case that would bring her down. In a way, she'd picked the worst possible target. Anyone else might have just paid the fines and moved on. But she'd picked a guy who'd spent his entire career investigating financial crimes, who knew how to read financial records and recognize patterns of fraud, who had the resources and the credibility to rally the community against her. Bad luck for her. Good luck for everyone else in Willowbrook. As I flipped the steaks on the grill, Emma came out to join me on the porch. Mom says you had an exciting first few months in the new house, she said with a grin. You could say that. She also says the neighborhood loves you now. I think there's a rumor going around that you're like a superhero retired FBI agent, defender of homeowners. I rolled my eyes. I'm nobody's superhero. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what a superhero would say. Jennifer came out with drinks for all of us, and we stood together on the porch watching the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in a women's correctional facility, Patricia Whitmore was probably still convinced she was the victim in this story. Her attorney had apparently tried to argue that she'd been under financial stress, that she'd made poor decisions but hadn't intended to hurt anyone. The judge hadn't bought it. Neither had I. Patricia had known exactly what she was doing. She'd set up a sophisticated scheme to steal from her neighbors, and she'd used her position of authority to intimidate anyone who questioned her. The only thing she regretted was getting caught, but that wasn't my problem anymore. My problem was making sure these steaks didn't burn and spending a pleasant evening with the 2 most important people in my life. The next morning, I went for a run through the neighborhood, something I'd started doing regularly since we moved in. I passed houses where I now knew the residents by name, People waved from their yards and porches. A couple of kids on bikes called out, "Hi, Mr. Nelson." This was what a community was supposed to feel like. Not fear and resentment, but neighborliness and mutual respect. When I got back home, there was an envelope in my mailbox. For a moment, I tensed, remembering those neon orange violation notices. But this envelope was white, and when I opened it, I found a thank you card signed by over 50 homeowners, expressing gratitude for what I'd done to expose Patricia's scheme. I showed it to Jennifer over breakfast. "You made a difference here," she said. "In a place we're going to call home for a long time. That matters." She was right. It did matter. Later that week, I got a call from Detective Ortiz with the Phoenix Police Department. "Mr. Nelson, I wanted to let you know that the last of the restitution payments have been processed. The HOA should receive the final transfer by the end of the month." "That's great news," I said. "Thank you for all your work on this case. Thank you for handing us such a well-documented investigation. Made my job a lot easier." She paused. "You ever think about coming out of retirement? We could use someone with your skills in financial crimes." I laughed. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy being retired. Though if you ever need an expert witness or someone to review financial documents, feel free to call. I'll keep that in mind." After I hung up, I thought about her offer. The truth was, I didn't miss the bureaucracy of the FBI or the long hours or the constant travel. But I did miss the work itself, the satisfaction of unraveling complex crimes and bringing perpetrators to justice. Maybe I'd find a way to stay involved on my own terms. Consulting, expert testimony, maybe even teaching a class at the local community college on financial fraud detection. Something to keep my skills sharp and feel like I was still contributing. But for now, I was content to be Richard Nelson, retired FBI agent and Willowbrook homeowner. The guy who'd taken down a corrupt HOA president and helped restore a sense of community to his neighborhood. Not a bad retirement project, all things considered. The following spring, the new HOA board organized a neighborhood block party to celebrate the community improvements that had been completed with the recovered funds. The pool area gleamed with fresh paint and new furniture. The playground had modern equipment that met all current safety standards. The walking paths had been repaved, and new desert landscaping had been installed throughout the common areas. I helped Doug set up tables and chairs in the community center parking lot, while Jennifer and Barbara organized the food. Kids ran around playing games while adults caught up with neighbors they hadn't really talked to in years. The atmosphere was light and celebratory, so different from the tense, fearful mood that had pervaded Willowbrook under Patricia's rule. As the sun began to set and someone fired up a sound system for music, Doug clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "I just want to say a few words," he announced. "A year ago, this community was in trouble. We were being systematically robbed by someone we trusted to lead us. A lot of us were afraid to speak up because we'd seen what happened to people who challenged the system." He gestured toward me. "Then Richard Nelson moved in. A lot of you know the story by now, but I want to make sure everyone understands what he did. He could have paid his fines, kept his head down, and avoided all the drama. Instead, he investigated, he organized us, and he gave us the courage to take our community back. Richard, on behalf of everyone here, thank you." Everyone applauded. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, but Jennifer squeezed my hand and smiled. "I appreciate that," I said when the applause died down. "But the truth is, you all did this. You signed the petition. You showed up at the meeting. You demanded accountability. I just helped point you in the right direction." "You did more than that," Barbara said. You showed us that bullies can be beaten if good people stand together." More applause followed, and then the party continued. As the evening wore on and the conversations flowed, I found myself thinking about all the communities across America that were probably dealing with similar situations. HOAs with too much power and too little oversight, board members who abused their authority, homeowners who felt helpless against an unjust system. Maybe there was something I could do about that on a larger scale. Write an article about red flags for HOA corruption. Develop a guide for homeowners on how to review financial records and identify irregularities. Partner with consumer protection organizations to raise awareness. The FBI had taught me how to investigate crimes. This experience had taught me how to organize communities to stand up for themselves. Combining those skills could help a lot of people, but that was a project for another day. Tonight was for celebrating with neighbors who'd become friends, in a community that had learned hard lessons about power, accountability, and the importance of standing up for what's right. As Jennifer and I walked home later that evening, the sound of music and laughter still drifting from the community center, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad we moved here," she said. "Even with all the drama, especially with all the drama. We found out what this community is really made of, and we found out that you still can't resist a good investigation." I laughed. "Guilty as charged. My retired FBI husband," she said affectionately. "Promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Next time we move somewhere, can we pick a place without a corrupt HOA president?" "I'll do my best," I said. "But if there is one, well, you know me." "That's what I'm afraid of," she said, but she was smiling. We walked the rest of the way home under a sky full of stars, in a neighborhood where we finally, truly felt like we belonged. Patricia Whitmore had tried to make our lives miserable, tried to intimidate us into submission. She'd failed because she'd underestimated who she was dealing with. I wasn't just another homeowner she could push around. I was someone who'd spent 30 years learning how to take down people exactly like her. When she learned I was retired FBI, she'd understood too late that she'd picked a fight she couldn't win. The evidence had been there all along in those financial records, waiting for someone with the right training and experience to find it. Patricia had gotten away with her scheme for years, because no one had known what to look for or how to interpret what they found. But I had known. And once I understood what she was doing, the rest was just a matter of building a solid case and presenting it in a way that would compel action. It was the same process I'd followed hundreds of times during my FBI career, just in a different context. The outcome was always going to be the same once I got involved. Patricia just hadn't realized it until it was too late. As we reached our house and I unlocked the front door, I took one last look around the neighborhood. Porch lights glowed warmly from houses up and down the street. A couple walked their dog past our house, waving as they went by. Everything was peaceful, orderly, and most importantly, fair. This was what a well-run HOA should look like. Not a tool for personal enrichment or petty tyranny, but a way for neighbors to work together to maintain and improve their shared spaces. We'd gotten here the hard way, but we'd gotten here. And I'd played a role in making it happen. Not bad for a retired FBI agent who just wanted to enjoy his golden years in the Arizona sunshine. Jennifer headed inside, but I lingered on the porch for a moment longer, savoring the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Somewhere Patricia Whitmore was probably still angry, still convinced she'd been wronged. But $260,000 had been returned to the people she'd stolen it from. A corrupt system had been dismantled and replaced with transparent, accountable governance. And a community had learned that they had the power to stand up to injustice when they worked together. Those were outcomes worth fighting for, whether you wore an FBI badge or were just a concerned homeowner who'd had enough. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and joined Jennifer in the kitchen where she was making tea. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make a difference in whatever small ways I could. But tonight, I was just Richard Nelson, retired FBI agent living peacefully in Willowbrook. And that was exactly where I wanted to be.